Please be advised, this episode does have content that some may find distressing. Listener discretion is advised and it is not suitable for anyone under the age of 13.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of It's Murder Up North, the podcast that covers crimes that occur in the north of England. Today's episode was voted for by my Twitter followers, and did they set me a challenge. Although this is a well-known case and is quite recent, there is so much information out there about it. Not all of it is factual, and I found it so difficult to find a narrative. Therefore, I really hope you enjoy the episode. Before I start the episode, I just want to introduce you to another podcast by a lovely couple, Rachel and Neil. It is definitely well worth you checking out.
Hello, fellow podcast enthusiasts.
My name is Rachel.
And I'm Neil, and together we are a husband and wife duo and the hosts of Mad or Bad, a true crime podcast.
Mad or Bad is a true crime podcast with a psychological twist, which takes a look at true crime cases from the UK and around the world. We cover murders, serial killers, disappearances, abuse scandals and much more.
We have a special interest in murders local to where we live in England. However, we also love covering other lesser known cases from around the world. We also love discussing psychological phenomena and how it relates to true crime.
So join us every Monday for a new true crime story where we discuss crime, murder, psychology and much more.
Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Now, let's head to the episode. Peter tentatively turned the key in the lock. As he opened the door, he took a deep breath. Stepping over the threshold, he called his daughter's name, but the only response was the echo of his own voice. As he made his way through the pristine house, room after room, he expected the worst. No one had heard from his daughter, and her concerned friends had called him, worried that she may have had an accident. He entered the kitchen. Everything was neat and tidy except for an unwashed cereal bowl in the sink and an electric toothbrush on the draining board. Nervously, he made his way upstairs. The treads creaked beneath his feet and his heart raced. He slowly pushed open the bedroom door, hoping maybe his child was ill in bed and had been too sick to answer the door. But as his eyes fell on the bed, it was empty and had been dressed neatly. A handbag hung over the foot end of the bed. Reaching inside, he found his daughter's purse and passport. He then turned his attention to the wardrobe. Opening it, he noticed her white chef's uniform and work bag were not there. Her phone charger lay unplugged on the bedside table, but no phone was in sight. The father's concerns grew as he entered the final room of the house, the bathroom. In his mind, he thought perhaps she had slipped on the wet floor and hurt herself and couldn't call for help. But this thought was swiftly dashed. The bathroom was empty. The only sign of activity was the presence of used hair dye boxes in the bin. As he returned downstairs, he noticed his daughter's slippers sat neatly by the front door, and her work shoes were missing. Panic swelled inside him. Where was his little girl? He hastily picked up the phone and dialed 999. Peter Lawrence's phone call to 999 on the 20th of March 2009 sparked the largest missing persons investigation in North Yorkshire Police's history, and left a nation asking, where is Claudia Lawrence? Claudia was 35 years old and lived alone in the Hayworth area of York, in a 2-bedroom Victorian terrace with a green front door. She loved to socialise. Her favourite place to be was the Nag's Head pub, which was just 4 doors away from her house. Here she would meet up with her best friends, Jen and Susie. She was born and raised in the picturesque market town of Malton, which is roughly an hour's drive from York. She had a happy childhood, shared with her older sister Ali. Their parents, John and Peter, had well-paid jobs, and this afforded them the luxuries of a middle-class lifestyle. Family holidays abroad, horse riding lessons, and a private school education. When Claudia left school, she pursued her passion for cooking by attending culinary college, and after working at a number of pubs, she secured a job working as a chef at the Roger Kirk Centre, which is part of York University. She subsequently moved to the house on Hayworth Road, which is roughly an 8-minute drive or 40-minute walk from the university campus. Shortly after Claudia finished culinary college, her parents divorced and her sister Ali moved to Derbyshire with her husband to start a family. It was said by her co-workers that Claudia was the type of person who would offer to work Christmas and other holidays to allow co-workers with children to be with their families. Perhaps this was because she didn't like the emotions and memories that these holidays bring. Her parents' divorce was a private matter. However, much has been made about how even after their daughter's disappearance, John and Peter are not seen together. Their divorce could not have been easy for Claudia. However, she did speak to her parents individually every day, which shows that there is still a bond between them. Despite her parents' separation, Claudia seemed to be content with her life in York. She had good friends, a beautiful house, and, although it didn't pay well, a job she loved. This is what made her disappearance so shocking. What could cause a 35-year-old woman who was happy with her life to just disappear? It has been 11 years since Claudia Lawrence went missing, and in that time there has been speculation, scandal and accusations. The police were criticised for their initial handling of the case, and people who may provide the information to crack the case chose to remain silent. But why? What or who are they protecting? There are so many unanswered questions, but let us start with what we do know. On the 4th of March, Claudia had taken her car to the garage after breaking down in the heavy snow that had blanketed York at the end of February. She was told that the car required a full engine replacement, which was going to take at least 2 to 3 weeks. Normally she would drive to work, however, while her car was off the road, she chose to walk instead. We do know that she was at the Nag's Head pub on Friday before she disappeared and had arranged to meet up with her friend Susie at 8 p.m. on Thursday the 19th of March. They were going to meet up at the pub to discuss plans to go on holiday to Cyprus. We also know that she was at work on the Wednesday. CCTV captures her at 2:30 p.m, leaving work and walking across the courtyard towards University Road. Her route home would take roughly 40 minutes, and at 2:45 she is seen posting a letter, before carrying on in the direction of home. Jo, a lady who worked with Claudia, recalls picking her up from a lay-by not far from the postbox and dropping her off outside her house at 2:50. 15 minutes later, Claudia is seen walking towards her house by a friend from the Nag's Head. They chat for a couple of minutes before parting. This witness stated Claudia was her usual bubbly self. But where had Claudia been in those 15 minutes? And is it relevant to her disappearance? The answer to that is still not known. Claudia was constantly using her phone. She didn't have a laptop and didn't use social media, so her phone was her way of keeping in touch with people. And on that Wednesday night, she was involved in a number of text conversations, as well as a phone call with her dad at 7:30 and another one with her mum at 8 p.m. Her conversation with her mum was regarding the weekend. It was going to be Mother's Day and she was planning on taking her mum for lunch and to do some shopping. The last text on her phone is an incoming message, which she never opened. The following day, on the Thursday, a voicemail is left at 10 a.m. by her manager at work, inquiring why she hasn't turned up for her shift. And then, at 12:10, her phone is deliberately switched off. That is the final action connected to Claudia. But who switched her phone off? On Friday the 20th of March, following calls from her concerned friends, Peter Lawrence meets George Foreman, the landlord of the Nag's Head pub, outside Claudia's house. After searching her home, contacting her work and her friends, Peter called the police. Over the years, there has been a lot of speculation regarding where Claudia is and what had happened to her. Did she leave by choice, by force, or was she involved in an accident? Due to her car being in the garage, Claudia would have set off walking to work at roughly 5:15 in the morning to ensure she arrived at work for 6 a.m. Her route was mainly through residential areas, so the likelihood of her being involved in an accident and not being found is very unlikely. So did she leave by choice? Claudia had fallen in love with the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, where she had spent numerous holidays and formed a number of friendships. She had even received a job offer from a bar owner in the country. Could she have gone there and left her old life behind? The last text she received was from a friend who had moved to Cyprus from York. He used to be a regular at the Nag's Head pub and would often split his time between the two countries. On Wednesday the 18th of March, between 9 and 9:30 p.m, a vehicle was seen parked near Claudia's house. The same type of vehicle owned by Claudia's Cypriot friend. Police also wondered whether Claudia had changed her appearance, which would explain the hair dye in her bathroom, and if her friend had helped smuggle her out of the country, perhaps she had obtained fake documents, hence why she left her ID and credit cards behind. Reports of sightings of the chef in Cyprus led police to head to the island to investigate. They questioned numerous people, including the man who had offered Claudia a job, but got no solid evidence, and her friend, whose car was apparently parked outside her house. He was in Cyprus at the time, with a cast-iron alibi. If I'm honest, it does seem like a very elaborate way to go about moving to another country. Especially when we consider that Claudia was already planning a trip to Cyprus for later that year. Why not just disappear whilst you're on holiday on the island? I also question why she'd just walk away from her life. To the outside world, she seemed perfectly happy. Her financial record showed she wasn't in any debt. There was no obvious reason for her to walk away and not tell anyone. Unless Claudia had a secret that she couldn't tell anyone. There were reports of drug dealing taking place in and around the Nag's Head. Perhaps Claudia saw or heard something that put her life in danger and forced her to leave. She changed her hair, left all her ID behind, and just walked away from her life. It was a well-known fact that she loved Cyprus and wanted to live there, so the chances are she would have gone somewhere else. But where and how? And if she did choose to disappear, perhaps it was Claudia herself who switched her phone off. A more recent theory is that she was the victim of sex trafficking. Had she been snatched on her way to work? Her mum was told by a man who works at the docks in Hartlepool that boats make daily trips to Amsterdam, and he is sure he saw Claudia boarding one of the vessels. Just like with the Cyprus lead, this was reinforced by rumours that Claudia had been working as a sex worker in Amsterdam. Once again, the police followed this lead, but got nowhere. Could it have been Claudia? Did the people who had her get wind of the fact the police were looking for her in Amsterdam and moved her on? or worse, killed her. Her friends argue that Claudia was too old to be a victim of sex trafficking. However, the scary truth is that anyone could be a victim. They are indiscriminate. They will target people from all races and backgrounds, and of all ages. Claudia was an attractive young woman, walking alone at a time of day when she would have been very vulnerable. She would have made an easy target. Speaking to ITV's daytime show Loose Women, Joan stated that she has wondered if Claudia is being held somewhere. Maybe with a TV or a radio, able to see her family and friends are still looking for her, but she is unable to contact them. This is a heartbreaking thought. But if she's out there, I sincerely hope that seeing her loved ones are still looking for her gives her some sort of strength. The other alternative is that she has been taken by someone she knows, which in terms of probability is the most likely option. The unanswered question is, was she taken from her home or while she walked to work? We know that Claudia was on the phone until at least 8:30 on the Wednesday. But there has been debate about whether she was at home alone. This comes from a witness who saw a man walking down Haworth Road at roughly 2:30 in the afternoon. He was talking on the phone in an expressive manner and stopped at a house with a green door. Claudia's is the only house on that terrace with that colour door. The witness observed a woman open the door. She was also on the phone and seemed very surprised by her visitor as she welcomed him into her home. Unfortunately, this woman was unable to tell the police what day this occurred, but she was sure it was the same week that Claudia disappeared. If this is the case, it would have had to have been on a day when Claudia was not working, as she would finish work at 2:30. So if we work off this assumption, this visitor must have arrived on a Saturday or a Sunday. But the question is, how long did they stay? And more importantly, was he there on the Wednesday night? If he was there on the 18th, did he see Claudia leave for work? Or has he not come forward because he is responsible for her disappearance? One point that has been picked up on by Claudia's mum is that her daughter's house was immaculate, which Joan claims was very unusual. She also pointed out that the slippers at the front door were not the type that Claudia would wear. They were too old-fashioned. It was also noted that beside her uniform and work bag being missing, so were Claudia's hair straighteners. Could she have got dressed that morning and her mysterious visitor had strangled her with the cords of her straighteners? Then he tidied the house and made it look like Claudia had gone to work. But how did he remove the body? There is an alleyway that runs down the back of Haworth Road. It is possible that her assailant used this to escape, and maybe there was vital clues. However, for some reason, the original investigation did not fully search the alleyway. It was only searched properly 6 years later during a case review. That is 6 years of any evidence being degraded by nature, disturbed by an unsuspecting individual, contaminated and even destroyed. The alleyway may have held key information. CCTV footage from a property opposite the alley captured activity that may have been pertinent to the case. At 7:15 on the night of the 18th of March, a man is seen walking towards the alley, which is just out of view of the camera. He disappears for a minute and then reappears. He pauses as someone crosses the road ahead of him, acting like he is searching for something in his pocket. Was this deliberate? Did he not want that person to see him? Whatever this man's intentions were, have never been discovered. He has never come forward to assist in the investigation. It has been claimed that he was a local property developer who owned a number of rental properties, including some on Claudia's terrace. So could he have just been looking to see if one of his tenants was in? Unfortunately, we will never know, as this man died of a heart attack a couple of weeks after Claudia's disappearance. In 2009, the alleyway could be used to access the rear of the Nag's Head pub, and as stated previously, the police had suspicions that drugs were being distributed in and around the pub. So could the man in the CCTV have been involved in this activity? Was he meeting someone in the alley to do an exchange? This would explain why he hasn't made himself known to the police. Another option is that he was someone who was stalking Claudia and had gone to the rear of the property to see if the lights were on in her home. A man was also witnessed outside her house at 7 a.m. on the 19th of March. He was described as being in his late 50s, early 60s, and roughly 6 foot tall. He wore a knee-length sandy-coloured mac and had a scruffy appearance. This sighting, although reported to the police in 2009, was not made public until 2015. Police have appealed for him to come forward. He never did. It is possible he has passed away, or he's afraid, or in the 6 years he completely forgot that he was there. It became apparent as the police investigation progressed that Claudia had a secret life that she kept from even her closest friends. In an appearance on Crime Watch UK, the detective in charge of the case stated that Claudia had a complex private life. This one comment had a detrimental effect on the direction of the case, as speculation and rumours began to take hold. Tabloid newspapers reported that Claudia had been having affairs with numerous married men and had been the cause of some of these marriages breaking down. Another rumour speculated that Claudia was supplementing her income by working as an escort. This was quickly dispelled by the police, who stated that there was no evidence to support this accusation. However, the damage had already been done. People had lost sympathy with Claudia and started to believe that whatever happened to her was of her own making. These rumours also prevented people coming forward with information, in fear of being caught up in a scandal or exposing their own secrets. Following the complex relationships comment, police were faced with a wall of silence. The investigators believe that someone in the community who knows Claudia has the key to cracking the case, but that person is remaining quiet to protect either themselves or someone else. It is highly possible that the people the police are looking for are known to Claudia. That is a large pool of suspects and may include partners of the men she had affairs with. It could be a friend or a co-worker. There has also been speculation that she became the victim of a serial killer. The most likely scenario is that Claudia was taken while on her way to work on the Wednesday. This is when she would have been most vulnerable. On that morning, there were a couple of sightings that could have been Claudia. The first witness was a cyclist who observed a woman matching her description talking to a man who was dressed in dark clothing with a black hoodie. He held a cigarette in his left hand. This sighting was at 5:35 a.m. at a place called Melrose Gate Bridge. If this was Claudia, it would have taken her roughly 24 minutes to get to work, so the chances are she would have been late that day. The next sighting was at 6:10 in the morning on University Road, a couple of minutes' walk from Claudia's workplace. This time, the witness described a maroon car pulled up at the side of the road. The passenger door was wide open and a couple were standing on the opposite side of the road having an argument. The witness provided a description very similar to the earlier couple seen by the cyclist. Could Claudia have accepted a lift off the smoking man on Melrose Gate Bridge? And was this who the witness saw having an altercation? Police once again appealed for these couples to come forward, and once again their appeals fell on deaf ears. University Road is possibly one of the most isolated parts of Claudia's route to work. It is likely that she was abducted from this area, This combined with reports that a backpack matching the grey and blue one she used for work was found on a footpath that runs parallel to the university suggests that maybe Claudia had tried to run away from her abductor, lost her bag in the struggle and been forced back to the vehicle. Sadly, by the time the report of the backpack was investigated, it had been removed from the location. Where it went and whether it was Claudia's bag is still a mystery. So if Claudia was forced into a car, where was she taken and by whom? Currently, police have arrested a total of 9 people since 2009 on suspicion of Claudia's murder. However, the Crime Prosecution Service have rejected calls for these individuals to be charged due to insufficient evidence. It is very difficult to prove a murder without a body, a crime scene, or a murder weapon. I do wonder how sure the police are one or more of these individuals were responsible for Claudia's disappearance. The key names that have come up in the case include a co-worker, a recent boyfriend, and the serial killer. Investigators first focused their attention on the Nag's Head pub. It formed the centre of Claudia's social life and was where many of her relationships were born. And one man in particular came under scrutiny. George Foreman, the landlord of the pub. He was the one who was with Peter Lawrence on the Friday when they entered Claudia's house. But if he was involved, what was his motive? And was there anything to link him to her disappearance? Could it be possible that he was attracted to the 35-year-old and watched her flirting and having relationships with other men, and this made him jealous? Did Claudia spurn his advances and he killed her? A search of the pub revealed a blood-stained mattress and sheet. Was she murdered in the pub? George also raised suspicion during a TV interview in which he repeatedly referred to Claudia in the past tense, which could be a sign that he knew she was deceased. DNA tests on the bloody items showed no match to Claudia, and there was no evidence in the pub of anything untoward happening. As for George's use of the past tense, it could purely be he didn't know how to refer to her. Even her best friends have got the past and present tense confused in previous interviews. The next person of interest was actually arrested 5 years after Claudia's disappearance. He was 59-year-old Mark Snelling, who worked at the university, and he would often give Claudia lifts to and from work. He was known to share a drink with her at the pub as well. His house, car, and a garage were all sealed off and searched, but police found nothing, and had to release Mr. Snelling without charge. People who knew him were shocked by the implication that he had been involved with Claudia's disappearance, and many people have come forward to defend him. A year after Claudia's disappearance, another co-worker of Claudia's mentioned that on Tuesday the 17th of March, the 35-year-old had come to work very tired. She told him that she'd been out all night and didn't get home until 5 a.m. that morning. She apparently had been spending the night with a new boyfriend. Why did this co-worker take a year to provide this information? He had been questioned a number of times previously, yet this was the first time he mentions it. He has also stated that he sometimes gave Claudia a lift to and from work. But on that particular Thursday, he, for some reason, chose to drive the long way to work. Was this just a coincidence? Or has he told police this to deflect attention away from himself? Did this boyfriend mentioned by the co-worker exist? Police traced Claudia's movements prior to her disappearance and discovered that she'd been spending a lot of time in the Acomb area of York, roughly 4 miles away from her home, on the opposite side of the city centre. She had been seen in a couple of pubs, one of them being the Acomb pub. Police appealed for anyone who saw her, especially taxi drivers who may have transported her there and back. In 2014, police arrested Paul Harris, the landlord of the Acomb pub. While he was being questioned, the pub was searched, the cellar was dug up, and items were removed, but he was later released on unconditional bail for perverting the course of justice. The arrest had far-reaching consequences for Paul, his wife, and his 5 children. His business lost money during the closure, but what hurt the family more was the accusations and rumours that started to appear on social media, stating that Paul had killed Claudia and claiming he had been having an affair with the chef, both of which were untrue. Paul Harris did answer one question for the police. He identified who Claudia had been visiting in the weeks running up to her disappearance. He named a kitchen porter called Anthony Newby, who was a former co-worker of Claudia's. Paul couldn't answer whether this was a romantic coupling or just two friends enjoying a drink. The landlord did tell the police that Claudia would arrive alone and leave alone. Anthony Newby must have been questioned by the police, but not much more is known what part, if any, he plays in the investigation. The police are still appealing for the man who Claudia spent Tuesday the 17th of March with, which suggests that Anthony had an alibi for that night. Which leads us to the theory that Claudia was the victim of a serial killer, a man called Christopher Halliwell, who was in prison for the murders of Sean O'Callaghan and Becky Godden. He had connections to Yorkshire as his dad lived in Huddersfield, a 1-hour drive from York. The eyewitness descriptions of the man talking to the woman on Melrose Gate Bridge match Christopher's general appearance. Apparently, Claudia told her mum about a man who had tried to lure her into a car, and a witness who saw this incident claimed that when she saw Christopher's picture on the television, she was certain it was the same man. Christopher Halliwell is serving 2 life sentences for the murders of Sean and Becky. However, the discovery of 60 items of women's clothing, some belonging to his known victims, have led police to believe that he has committed other murders. Halliwell hasn't officially been named as a suspect in Claudia's disappearance. They cannot link him forensically to the case, and there is speculation that the murderer was in hospital when Claudia went missing. Despite the searches of numerous properties, the countless interviews and arrests, the police have still been unable to answer the key question: where is Claudia Lawrence? The only forensic evidence they have is DNA found on a cigarette butt, which was in Claudia's car, the car that was in the garage when she disappeared. Could this really be the vital clue that they need to solve the case? So far, police have been unable to identify who the DNA belongs to, but I do believe they have a person or persons of interest. They just don't have enough evidence to charge them. Investigators are sure someone out there has the answer and hope that one day they will come forward and help them close the case. My personal opinion on the case is that I believe that if Claudia didn't get any sleep on the Monday night, maybe by the time she got home on the Wednesday, she was so tired she fell asleep after her call with her mother, perhaps on the sofa, and that's why her bed was made. I think that she woke up late on the Thursday and rushed to get ready for work, hence the dirty cereal bowl in the sink, the electric toothbrush on the draining board. Could also explain the missing hair straighteners. She took them to work, so she could do her hair when she got there. If Claudia was running late, it would also make her more likely to accept a lift off someone. If it was Claudia who was talking to the smoking man on Melrose Gate Bridge, maybe she accepted a lift off him. The next potential sighting of Claudia, possibly arguing with a man near the university. Again, if this was Claudia, could something have happened in the car? The passenger door was still open, suggesting the passenger had left in haste. Where they were arguing is close to the footpath where Claudia's backpack was reportedly abandoned. Could she have fled and, during a struggle, lost her bag, before being dragged or forced back to the vehicle? It is possible that no one would have been alerted to this, given the isolated nature of the area and the time of day. I do not know what happened from that point. Claudia's phone was tracked to within a 9-mile radius of the university before it was switched off. This area covered the university, her home, and the area of Acomb, but that does not mean that she wasn't taken away from York. I wonder whether Claudia had attempted to contact someone for help. Her abductor had seen her do this and switched the phone off. This case has been surrounded by rumours and speculation. Theories regarding where Claudia's body is concealed, from lakes and fields to the concrete foundations of a new building on the university campus, which was laid at the same time as Claudia's disappearance. Rumours surrounding the Nag's Head and the belief that something happened to Claudia there and they are covering it up, that's why nobody wants to talk, and more heinous claims that Claudia was killed and fed to pigs on a nearby farm. Ultimately, we need to remember that Claudia was a daughter, a sister and an auntie. Her disappearance has tortured her family and friends for 11 years. All these rumours do is add to the pain of not knowing. This episode is probably the most challenging one I've covered yet. I struggled to find a narrative, and I also struggled to sift fact from fiction. Hopefully I've brought you the facts and given it to you in a clear and concise way. There is so much else I could have told you about in this episode. For example, there is more CCTV footage of people near Claudia's house around the time she disappeared. And there is also CCTV footage of a car braking heavily outside her home on the day she vanished. However, the timing of the braking car would have been after Claudia had gone to work, so I'm not sure how relevant it is to the case. And the people moving back and forth could possibly be part of the drug activity I mentioned, so just for clarity I decided to leave them out of the case. The hair dye that was found in the bathroom. Claudia was known for dyeing her hair regularly. Sometimes she'd be a blonde and other times she'd be a darker brown. It was also discovered that the photo that was issued when she first disappeared was outdated. Her hair colour at the time was much different and she may have appeared different to people. This has subsequently been corrected. When I listen to her parents talking about her, it breaks my heart to think that they just don't know, and it's the not knowing that must be so hurtful to them. Thank you so much for listening to episode 10 of It's Murder Up North. As always, you can keep in touch with It's Murder Up North on Facebook and on Twitter. There is now also a Patreon page if you wish to support the podcast. Stay tuned for episode 11 next Sunday. So in the meantime, keep an eye on those shadows.